The drops in driving are historic changes. There's no question about it that the nation is currently witnessing dramatic changes in how Americans are traveling. After years and years of steady increases for a variety of reasons, driving first began to slow down, then level off, and then with the dramatic increases in gas prices, they started to drop for the first time ever. And we're currently witnessing the largest sustained drops in driving that this nation has ever seen. There are a lot of implications that obviously come along with the drops in driving. The United States funding system, as it relates to transportation, is tethered completely, almost completely, to the federal gas tax. So as Americans are driving less, consuming less gas, they're paying less than the gas tax, and so there's less transportation revenue to be spent on a variety of transportation projects. So the funding and finance challenges associated with the drops in driving get considerable attention as the economic crisis hits states, metropolitan areas, and the nation as a whole. This is the result of, or this has resulted in a lot of hand-wringing in states from coast to coast. The gas tax should be raised on the federal level to at least cover the shortfall that we're going to be facing over the next calendar year or more into the future. The gas tax on the federal level hasn't been raised in 20 years, so that's certainly something that Congress and the new administration needs to address in the short term. But states also largely haven't raised their gas taxes in a number of years. Some states have dropped it. Some states restrict the spending on the gas tax to highways only and don't open it up to other modes like transit or like non-motorized projects like bike and pedestrian projects. So when we think about the gas tax, it's certainly not a federal issue. The states have a major role in funding their own transportation programs through their own fuels tax. Indexing those to inflation is certainly an alternative that could be considered. Some states are now getting ready to uptick their own gas taxes as a regular annual occurrence or a 6-month occurrence. It avoids all the difficult political and policy questions you have in state legislatures, and it avoids larger conversations around taxing and financing that raise considerable consternation. As Congress works through this economic recovery plan and plans to inject tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars towards infrastructure and transportation particularly, it needs to keep in mind that we are witnessing historic changes in travel patterns and that these plans, which have been on the books for a number of decades and which these shovel-ready, ready-to-go projects are based on, may not be projects that we need in this country over the next couple of years. There's no question about it that we need to rebuild the existing system. We've seen tragic reminders of that. We've seen the most mundane reminders of that. But the existing system needs attention. It needs to be rebuilt and maintained. But we should have a hard conversation about what kind of new infrastructure we need. Do we need multiple beltways around metropolitan areas? Do we need more freeways to nowhere? Or do we need to invest in things like transit infrastructure, things that both support long-term goals that come with the drop in driving and also support existing cities, metropolitan areas, and suburban areas as well? We need to focus on metropolitan areas. These are the engines of our economy. They're where a large percent of the U.S. population lives, where a large percent of the GDP is produced, and where a considerable amount of transportation challenges and opportunities reside. So by not focusing on these metropolitan areas, we're really missing a major part of the transportation puzzle. The data that comes out from the U.S. Department of Transportation focuses on the nation, on the states, and on these super regions, these clusters of states, but misses these analyses in metropolitan areas. Well, the trends that are going on in the city of New York, I think, argue for the larger benefits that do come along with increased driving. There are those who feel like that the nation can't continue to grow economically unless we're increasing driving. We feel like nothing could be further from the truth. And New York just is an example of how a city can continue to grow, continue to be strong and healthy and vital, and at the same time reduce the amount of driving that's going on in that metropolitan area. Now, clearly they're losing finance and some funding sources that come through less toll revenue on New York's roads and bridges. There's no doubt about that. But by reducing congestion and reducing travel within that metropolitan area, there are clear benefits that I think any New Yorker would welcome.